Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, we showcase the top 10 third baseman prospects in the MLB. I am, as always, Brian, and with me, Mike. You're going to be my co-host. It's just what it is. Ross R. Jensen.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay, co-host Ross R. Jensen. Brian, as always, and Ross R. Jensen. So, well, I guess first off, how you doing? How was the New Year's?
It's good. Fairly standard. It was low key for me. Didn't do anything too crazy this year.
Yeah.
Oh, something else to talk about that I'm really excited about. This is Scout the Statline related. We got a new partner, another new partner. So we've been just doing all this stuff through this off season. We got pitching translations, which was the biggest thing, but we've partnered with Pitcher Digs. And if you've never heard of this guy, he does a lot of really cool leaderboards, and he posts them onto a Google site that he manages. And he's allowed us to also host his leaderboards on our pages, and some of them are exclusive. So you won't find them anywhere else. And those are reserved for our members. So if you're interested in joining, this is a good time because you also get access to some exclusive leaderboards. So what he has shared with us so far, and there's going to be more coming, I think, is his bags leaderboard, which is his batter game score. So it's just another formulated ranking sort of system. And then his Pitcher Digs leaderboard, which is where his name comes from. This is the one that's kind of his bread and butter, defense independent game score. So it's a pitching rating system. So he's also shared a couple other boards with us, the exclusive ones. One is minor league grades. So he put everything onto kind of a 20/80 scale, and for their different sorts of capabilities, hit tool, power, etc. And he's got about 6 or 7 of these different ones for each player listed out. And then he's got an average score. So that's pretty fun. And then our first NCAA content ever. This guy has built a leaderboard for all. It's kind of like it's a game score for all batters going back to 2017 to present, and also includes those scout grades. So that's a pretty fun one. And if you take a look at that, you'll understand why I'm still obsessed with the idea of Nick Gonzalez being a superstar, because he's number one on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Some big stuff. Big
Cool.
Year for Scout the Statline 2023.
Huge.
We got our beers. And I always go first. So I'm going to take a back seat and I'm going to let you introduce. Did you get another big beer?
I did not today. Did you?
That's okay. No, I got a specialty.
So I went to the store to pick out a beer, and I made a poor decision. I went to the wrong store. They had an okay selection, but it was not the place that has the great selection that I usually go to. And I was like, I don't really feel like that kind of beer, was being a little selective for some reason, trying to look for something a little bit new. And I just really wasn't seeing anything new. And I ended up picking out a beer. And then after I got home, I was like, I am certain that I already did this beer on one of our pods. And I found out that I did it on our first pod. Because I went back and I looked, and I was like, it was probably the first one. And I looked and watched it, and I was like, there it is. But I happen to have other beer that is unique, and we have not done on any of these pods. And this is the second time I'm doing a sockeye beer. Sockeye is kind of my go-to brewery around here in town. Big fan of their beers. This is called Stone's Throw. It's an Imperial Cold IPA. Stone's Throw. So it's a little stronger, 8.1% ABV. Probably on the maltier side, 45 IBUs. I'm going to give her a pour.
It looks good.
All right. Yeah, it's good.
It's a good one.
Yep.
What?
All right. What do you got, Brian?
So I got the one that I wanted to buy last time because it was so damn cold outside. So this one is from the Kona Brewing Company. So this one's called the Big Wave.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with Big Wave.
You like the Big Wave?
We drink that stuff all the time.
Yeah, big Wave Golden Ale.
Okay, Big Wave. Yeah, that's kind of a go-to for me and some of my friends here when we're drinking a lighter beer. Nice glass.
Yeah,
I like that.
Little Day of the Dead and some Aloha. That's a good beer.
Yeah, good.
I like golden ales.
Yeah, me too. It's a good break for me between doing the heavier stuff and something a little easier, drinkable.
It's really caramely. Is it supposed to be caramely? That's really good.
That would strike me as slightly unusual, maybe a little bit more than a typical like Pilsner, I guess.
We are gonna do third baseman tonight, Ross. And as I was kind of looking over what we're going to talk about tonight, I found myself thinking exclusively about you. I think you like this list probably a lot more than 90% of the people are gonna did like the list. Once you guys are done listening to this, you're gonna like it a lot too. So let's do it. Let's jump into it. Do you want to pinpoint anything before we dive in
about third baseman?
Yeah.
No, but we are going to cover some of the best prospects in the game by the time we finish this list. So I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. And we're going to start with one that might be my favorite prospect in all of the minors. And he has been for a long time. I've owned him forever. Really, really like him. Coming in at number 10, Josh Young with the Texas Rangers. He's 6'2", 214 pounds. He's already 24 years old. Without a few injuries, he would have already debuted right now. Ross, will you break down the stats for us?
Absolutely. Josh Young, hailing from Texas Tech. He spent 3 years there. He was drafted by the Rangers in the first round after a pretty awesome career with the 8th pick overall. So let me touch on his college career a little bit. I don't want to belabor it. After a decent debut where he batted .306 with a .453 slugging percentage, in 2018 and 2019, he really stepped up his game. Both of those seasons, he had an OPS over 1,100, so he was really crushing the ball. He walked more than he struck out both of those years. As a sophomore, he hit 12 home runs with a .392 batting average, notable, and a .491 OBP and a .639 slugging percentage. And his final year with Texas Tech, he hit .343 with a .474 OBP and a .636 slugging percentage. So the batting average was down a little bit. Over the fence power was up a little bit as he hit more home runs in fewer plate appearances. So he joined the Rangers in 2019 after being selected with that 8th pick that I mentioned. And right away, they stuck him into rookie level for a small period of time, boosted him up to single A. And he had a pretty decent debut. Overall in the season, he had .316 with a .389 OBP and a .443 slugging percentage. Only 174 or 198 plate appearances, So it was not a huge sample that first year, but it was a good start. So after the last COVID season, 2021, he played most of the season in the high minors, and he really elevated his game after that year off. Overall in the season, he hit .326 with a .398 OBP and a .592 slugging percentage. So almost 1,000 OPS, 19 home runs on the season. And that was coming in 342 plate appearances. So really, really solid season, really split between AA and AAA. That's what you want to see, a guy that's doing that well in the high minors. This season, he missed most of the year, but when he did come back in the minor leagues, he spent some time in the major leagues as well. He didn't quite replicate those great numbers that we saw last year. He still performed pretty well. He had a 273 this is at AAA. He had a 273 batting average, a 321 OBP, so still kind of getting into the swing of things, and a 525 slugging percentage. One thing to note about this year, his plate discipline was awful. It was awful. I'm going to chalk most of that up to injury and kind of shaking off the rust, because he didn't look like he had pretty decent plate approach prior to that. Not great, but I think this year the strikeouts were up and the walks were down, and he was probably over swinging a little bit.
Yeah.
Shaking off some rust.
So my biggest thing, and it reverts back to 2021, but Josh Young is not a fast guy. He's not going to be blowing doors off by any means, but he hit 22 doubles. And that tells me he hits the ball freaking hard. And whether it's just really good placement, I don't know. I don't know that for certain, but 19 home runs and 22 doubles. I think he puts it in the right position, but then it's hit hard, and he's able to turn a single into a double just because of how hard he hits the ball. Josh Young is easily one of my favorite prospects, and he's going to start for the Rangers at third base.
You think he's going to be their opening day?
Yep.
Third baseman.
Yep, no doubt in my mind.
I could see that. Absolutely.
I also think he's going to win Rookie of the Year.
That's a bold prediction, man. Hot takes. We got them. Scout the Statlines podcast. We got hot takes
all day. Hot takes all day. That's Josh Young, fellas.
Josh Young.
He's going to be great. I'm sorry. I'm just massively bullish on him. I get butterflies.
He's a go get him.
Yeah, he's a go get him. Yeah. All right. Let's jump in to number 9. This gentleman goes by the name of Colt Keith. He's a third baseman for the Detroit Tigers, currently affiliated with the High A. He's 6'3", 211 pounds. He's 21 years old. He was drafted in 2020 in the 5th round, 132 overall. In 2021, he had 224 at-bats. His average was 286, OBP of 396, and a slugging of 393. 2 home runs, 4 stolen bases. Not a lot of stuff here. Just kind of a ho-hum sort of deal going on. Not a whole lot of power. He did wind up in High A in his first year, which it's notable that he came through 3 different levels in 224 at bats. In 2022, he repeated High A. He recorded another 193 at bats. He batted 301, had an OBP of 370, slugging 544, and we're getting into that OPS, that OPS that we like of 914. So anything above 9 is notable. We want to start getting excited and figure out what's going on. You get over 1, and then we get really excited. But he did add 9 home runs, 3 triples, 14 doubles, and 4 stolen bases. I have to admit, and this is shameful to me because I am a Detroit Tigers fan, I didn't know who Colt Keith was. What do you got on Colt Keith?
Well, he's an interesting one because he has been getting some hype this offseason. And I'm sort of with you. I'm not like, I don't know that I'm seeing that quite as much as other people are. I think he had a pretty solid season.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to highlight he played in the Arizona Fall League this year, and there he did really well. And maybe this is where part of some of that hype is coming from. But he had 344 with a 463 OBP and a 541 slugging percentage in 80 plate appearances, and he walked as much as he struck out. That's a pretty good Arizona Fall League showing right there
against topped prospects,
against some top talent. So that could be a big part of where the hype is coming from. Scout the Statline is seeing him above Josh Young. I wouldn't place it like that personally. I think Young has a little more of a exciting potential in front of him than I see from Colt Keith, but Colt Keith looks like a fairly steady performer.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're going to get from him.
So I am saying for Colt Keith, open your eyes, start watching him. I have no idea what he is. Because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put him on my watch list, and I'm going to see what he does during the season. And if he gets a little bit hot, maybe I'm going to go get some shares.
Yeah, he doesn't strike out a lot for a young guy in high A. It's a solid. He doesn't walk a ton either, but it's not bad. His plate approach is a little better than Josh Young, and I think that's probably why he's ranked above him. But the power potential seems a little bit lower. STS gives him a 60 for his hit tool compared to Young, who had a 50. 50 for power compared to Young, who had a 60. And then they're both slow. So
yeah.
Low average speed.
We're gonna see a few slow guys here.
Slow guys in the hot corner.
They're there for a reason.
That's right.
Colt Keith. All right. Going to jump into number 8. Edinson Polino. And he's a 20-year-old out of the Dominican Republic. In 2019, what Edison did, he had 108 bats in the rookie at the DSL level, and he batted 287 with a 394 OBP and slugged 380. No home runs. He did have 2 stolen bases. He was caught 6 times, 3 triple baggers, which is notable. So not a whole lot to talk about there. In the DSL, we do want to see eye-popping stuff. We want to see craziness, 380s, and just to, get us excited, because they are against a competition that is lesser than what we want them to play in the States. Am I wrong on that?
I just think it's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I view it.
Yeah. So we missed 2020, but in 2021, only had 113 at bats, 16 doubles, once again, 0 home runs. But he did get 5 stolen bases and only got caught twice. He batted 336, an OBP of 436, and a slugging of 549. So the OPS is at 985, which is starting to get to that zone that gets people excited. 2022, 463 at bats. So now we have something to bite into. We have some stats that are meaningful that we can really go off of. He did hit 13 home runs, which is
first of his career.
Massively.
Yeah, 0 coming into this season, and he hit 13, so that's pretty good improvement.
Yeah. And 27 stolen bases with an average of 266, OBP 359, and slugged 469. So OPS dropped a little bit down to 828, but we've seen his power numbers kind of come into play. 35 doubles, 10 triples, which I think is really notable. 10 triples is a lot. I don't care how many at-bats he has. What do you got on Edison?
Well, he had a lot of doubles in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 16 doubles in 133 plate appearances. That's the only thing you can really point to explain that slugging percentage. Using those wheels, he's got speed. He's got some, his scout grade equivalencies for STS are not great. If you look at it from, they're not great if you look at it from the perspective of a 50 is supposed to be major league average, and he grades out at 45 for hit tool, slightly below average, and then 50 for power and run. But yet somehow that's enough to bump him above those last two guys that we talked about. I think a lot of that has to do with that speed, and he's a pretty solid on base guy, pretty decent plate approach, it seems. He's clearly growing into power, very promising sign. You look at a guy that is that small and lean, and he had 0 career home runs coming into this year, and he hit 13. That's a pretty good improvement.
Yeah.
You know who else was kind of like that early in their career? Mookie Betts. And this guy's in the major leagues hitting 30 home runs a year. So somebody, I'm not saying he's Mookie Betts, but somebody like this is the kind of guy that can turn into that type of player.
Rafael Devers signed for 11 years, $331 million at third base.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Like, he's got that fairly locked down for now, but he's also a big guy. He may eventually move across the diamond. They got some other talent coming up at first base too. It's hard to say. And Paulino himself, maybe he's not a third baseman. He's played all over the place too. So he's played a little bit in the outfield. He's played second base quite a bit. We could have probably put him at second base rankings and really beefed up those rankings just by putting him over there. But I mean, he could be all over the map. He's going to have the capability to be a utility type of guy. He played a lot at shortstop too.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. There he is, Edison Paulino. All right, we're cruising along. We're cruising along tonight. I like it. Good conversation. Good beers. We have Junior Caminero. Junior Caminero, a 19-year-old out of the Dominican Republic. What do you got on Junior?
So this is actually one of my favorite prospects for 2023. I'm really excited about this guy. And mostly this crept up late in the season for me last year. So let me walk through his statistical performances. Junior Caminero came into the league in 2021. He's out of the Dominican Republic. And as a 17-year-old in the DSL, again, I'm not putting too much emphasis on these kind of numbers, but he did hit 295 with a 380 OBP and a 534 slugging percentage. So that's a pretty solid debut for a 17-year-old in the DSL. This year, and as the season progressed, I became more interested. And as I dug into it a little deeper, I became more interested. He played at 2 levels. This is an 18-year-old, and he's now 19, played the season primarily as an 18-year-old. Across rookie level and single A, almost split time there, a little bit more at the rookie level. Overall in the season, he hit 314 with a 384 OBP and a 498 slugging percentage. He hit 11 home runs and he stole 12 bases. I don't see this guy as, despite having the 12 stolen bases, this was in 271 plate appearances, by the way. I don't see him as being a big stolen base guy in the future, but I think the power is there and I think it's going to grow. And there's something about the rates with this guy that are very appealing to me. He doesn't strike out that much. And at peak, he projects to only strike out in 15% of his plate appearances. He doesn't
Huge.
walk. Yeah. Good. Very, very good. He's got a knack for barreling the ball. He doesn't walk a lot either. So there's a flip side to that. 8% walk rate. I wouldn't say that it's low, but it's not particularly high. But he grades out with some very good tools for hit and power. And at peak, he projects to hit 29 home runs per 600 plate appearances on average. Pretty good. So let me read his peak projected stat line because it's one of the nicer looking ones. On average, he projects at peak for a 263 batting average, a 327 OBP, and a 454 slugging percentage.
One thing I want to point out for Junior, and it, not quite about him, but about his affiliations in pro ball, is he was signed by the Cleveland Guardians, which I'm starting to understand that the Guardians are really good at scouting their players. And then he was traded to the Rays, which I think we all know our love, me and Ross's love, for how the Rays are building their players, scouting their players, acquiring talent. They're top notch. It's unbelievable. Almost every single one of our lists will have a Ray on it, no matter what, because they're incredible at finding talent.
Yep. So we're looking at another Rays player with a very promising future. I'm really excited for Junior Caminero. I think if you haven't already, you should be looking into obtaining this guy if he's owned in your league. If he's not, you should be looking at adding him or drafting him, whatever it may be. I think this is a potential breakout for 2023, and he's one of the players that I'm most excited for.
And we're potentially looking at a 20-year-old in AA. Probably not even potentially, probably a given.
Well, I think he starts in, either single A or high A, would be a starting point for him. If he's hitting the ball, striking it as well as he was this year, then yeah, I think he could see AA for sure.
For sure. Junior Caminero, fellas. Go ahead and say it, Ross.
Go get him.
And we are jumping into number 6. And his name is Brett Baty. He plays for the New York Mets. He's a 23-year-old. He was drafted in 2019, first round, 12 overall, out of Austin, Texas. I really like Brett Baty. I really do. Let's start in 2019. 2019 was not a terrific year for Brett Baty. Matter of fact, I think his prospect status plummeted pretty hard in 2019. You're going to see an ebb and a flow with him. He batted 234 across 3 different levels. He had 188 at bats, 234 on base, 368, slugged 452, 7 home runs, no stolen bases. That's not what Brett Baty's going to be. He's
not a part of the game.
Not part of his game. He ended up in a short ball. And we had the missed year of 2020. And in 2021 is when the ebb and the flow came. So it came and popped back up. He had 332 at bats between 2 different levels. He had A+ league and AA. Aggregate, he batted 292, on base 382, slugged 473 with 12 home runs. He did have 6 stolen bases. Let's put it out there. 22 doubles. So overall, 2021 was a good year for Brett Baty. His prospect status started shooting up the boards again. 2022, the majority of the year he played in Double A, which I love Double A stats. I eat them up. I love it. I think that's the best competition in the minors. And he did get a short call up to the Triple A league. But overall, he had 362 at bats. He batted 315, on base percentage 410, and had a slugging of 533. OPS 943. So it's in that range that I really enjoy. Anything above 925, you're getting into some pretty remarkable stuff. 19 home runs, like I said, and his prospect status is back on the board, and we're going to see him in New York next year. What do you got on Brett Baty?
Brett Baty's an interesting one from the perspective of, I don't think I've really ever been too hot on this guy. I think maybe you're right. As you were walking through that, it kind of made me think about this a little bit, but that 2019 might have left a sour taste in my mouth that I just haven't shook. You have to love, regardless of whether you are like me and you're just kind of like, you write him off and you just don't even think about him again. You have to love the trend of his career right now. As he's moving up and moving closer to the major leagues, he's getting better. He's hitting more. He's hitting with more power. That's exactly what you want to see. So I can't really make any qualms about that. It looks nice. And he's still, he'll be 23 years old, probably spend quite a bit of time in the major leagues this year, if not the entire season. So it's good. He's a guy that you probably want to think about a little bit more than I have. He grades out with a 60 hit tool, a 55 for power, and the speed is negligible, as we mentioned before. I think this is a guy you got to pay attention to.
Yeah. Big guy too.
The strikeout rate it's a little high.
It's not crazy.
It's not crazy, and it's improving. You can see this looking from 2019 to 2021 to 2022, it's gone down every single year. So while the OPS has gone up every year, the strikeout rate has gone down. Like, you have to love that trend. You have to love that trend. You look at every single one of his statistical lines, and they've gone up. Average, OBP, slugging, OPS, obviously. Home runs, yeah.
What is he? Is he go get him?
Well, I think his stock is probably a little too elevated already to say he's a full go get him, because you're going to pay a price for him. I think he's got some decent potential in front of him. He's got that really nice trend, but you're going to have to pay a premium for him.
Yeah. And he's only 23. Won't be 24 till August.
Yeah.
Probably has 200 at bats in the majors at that point.
What about for you, Brian? Is he a go get him?
Oh yeah. He's been a go get him for a little while for me.
We're moving on to our number 5 prospect for Scout the Statline's top third baseman, and that's Christian Encarnacion Strand. So
Christian was drafted in the 4th round, pick number 128 overall in the 2021 draft. He's 6 foot, 224 pounds. He's a bulky guy. He came out of Oklahoma State. In 2021, he was affiliated with the single A ball club for the Cincinnati Reds. He had 87 at bats. He hit 391, OBP 424, slugged 598, 4 home runs and 2 stolen bases, just 87 at bats. But in 2022, the fun started for Christian, and he had 484 at bats over 2 different levels. He had A+ league, and then he got into Double A. He batted 304 over 484 at bats. He had a on-base percentage of 368, a slugging percentage of 587, and he hit 32 home runs with 8 stolen bags. Now, the 8 stolen bags are just kind of a little cherry. He might have a little bit of speed. It's not going to be a huge part of his game, but man, those home runs came in bunches, and he had 114 RBIs across 484 at bats. Big deal. He did strike out 137 times. Little bit of concern there. It's getting into that realm of calm it down, bud. What do you got on Christian?
I mean, he's a slugger.
Yeah.
For starters, I want to give a little bit of love to one industry folk on this one. Drew Wheeler. I read an article that he wrote at the beginning of last season, and he called out Christian Encarnacion Strand. And I still was kind of like, I'm not sure about this guy quite yet. And he's made a believer out of me. This guy's a slugger.
Yeah.
He's a slugger. He hits the ball hard, and he's got a track record for doing that, stretching back to last season, stretching back to his time with Oklahoma State. He's a slugger. He's slugged everywhere he has been. Props to you, Drew Wheeler, for picking this guy out. You found an undervalued talent. And this was an acquisition of the Reds last year. And I want to point this out because the Reds are finally giving me something to be excited about. Those of you that don't know, I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan. So they're finally, for the first time in my adult life, I feel like they're finally stocking up on some young talent. And I'm actually interested in these guys that are coming up. I'm just happy that the Reds finally recognize that they're not going anywhere and they're buying some young talent.
Compile some talent.
This is what they've needed to do for probably at least 2 decades.
Yeah.
Christian Encarnacion Strand is one of those guys. He's a slugger. He can hit the ball. He hit 32 home runs this year. The strikeout rate is high.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't walk a lot. He's swinging for the fences.
He's connecting.
He's connecting at a very strong rate. These are his peak projections. I'll let them speak for themselves. 269 batting average, 324 OBP, 484 slugging percentage, 28 home runs. That seems to me like a player you want on your team. Hey, by the way, I'm available if you want to hire me as your GM, Cincinnati Reds. I can. I'm just saying, I know how this works. I've built some fantasy baseball dynasties that have been pretty successful. So
that's him.
You know, I don't know if there's very few. There's maybe no such thing as the perfect hitter anyway out there. There are some hitters that have really, really good looking profiles. And then there are some that it's like they're effective. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's fine. They're effective.
I wrote about one that's damn near perfect today.
Was it Wander Franco?
It certainly was.
No kidding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good name drop. I can't believe you pulled that out of your hat.
If you're gonna point me to a profile that I think is practically perfect, it's gonna be his. So
yeah. Counting stats aren't there yet, but man, all right. Now we're getting in to the point now. We're at top 4 third baseman in the major league prospect level that I think Ross is going to get really excited for. 3 of these 4, I know he's really excited for. The 4th, I think everybody should be excited for. And we'll get into him in a little bit. But first, let's jump in to Mr. Curtis Mead. Ross has had a lot to say about Curtis Mead in probably a year and a half, 2 years, somewhere in that range. Curtis Mead, he's 6'2", 171 pounds. He's 22 years old. He was born in Australia. Did you know that, Ross?
Yep.
Okay. Of course you did.
Hey, mate. Of course
Hey,
I knew that.
Mr. Ross Jensen, I want you to break down Curtis Mead's stat because I know you like him. And I know you like him a lot.
So Curtis Mead has had an interesting career. He played baseball in Australia. That's how I know he's from there. From a wee age, at 16, he started his career playing baseball in Australia. He came over stateside in 2021. And I just love this guy's profile. I really do. This guy strikes me as just a pure hitter. So he started, I'm going to walk through it. In 2021, as a 20-year-old, he came into the league, was placed in single A as a Ray. Again, the Rays doing great stuff. And he hit 356 with a 586 slugging percentage. Earned himself a promotion. There, he met some stiffer competition. The batting average dropped a little bit. He had 282 there. He still slugged 466. Speed is not a huge part of this guy's game. Like I said, he's just a pure hitter. And then the Rays were impressed enough to get him a very small taste at the end of the season at Triple A. From high A, he was bumped up to Triple A. You don't see that very often. And I was making this rallying cry at the end of 2021, and this was maybe a little premature, but I was like, you know who else did something like that? Albert Pujols. And then he was in the major leagues and he was crushing it the next season. So it didn't quite go that way, but he did really well in AAA in a small taste that he got there. And overall in that season, he hit 321 and slugged 533. He's not a huge OBP guy, but he doesn't strike out very much either. So this is another one of those guys that's barreling the ball. He hit 15 home runs that season as well and stole 11 bases.
38 doubles.
38 doubles. That is notable. Yeah. So fast forward to this year, he spent his entire season in the high minors between AA and AAA, most of the season at AA. There he hit 305 and he slugged 548. When he was moved up to AAA, results again dropped a little bit like they did when he made that transition from single A to high A, but still pretty solid, 278 batting average and a 486 slugging percentage. He missed the rest of the season with an injury, and I'm really bummed about that because I think his trend was straight up, and I think he could have seen the major leagues if not for that injury. The question mark when it comes to Christian Mead is really about his defense. I don't really know where they're going to play him, and with the Rays, that's a big consideration. You know, you gotta be able to play D in their schema. So we'll see what happens. Maybe long term he could be a first baseman. He could play third base. He could go all over like everybody else, but he's got to be competent enough to be getting that regular playing time, or else he's going to find his way to like DH or something like that. I think they'll probably maneuver him around to different positions. They're trying to give him a taste at a lot of different places. We probably could have ranked him at other places as well, though he did spend most of his time in 2022 as a third baseman.
I do want to highlight this. There was a reason that I brought up the 38 doubles in 2021. He hit another 27 in 2022. In 262 hits that he had 77 doubles. You turn 10 of those into home runs. And we're talking about a slugging percentage that is off the charts.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard this guy has baseball roots. His dad was a pretty successful baseball player in Australia.
That's Curtis Mead, guys. We are in the top 3 already. Number 3, we are going to dive into a prospect that I believe is one of the most slept on prospects. I've seen him dropped in leagues and nobody even thinks about picking him up. And he goes by the name of Miguel Vargas. He's 23 years old. It seems like he's been around forever. He's 23 years old. And he's with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's out of Cuba. He's a big guy. He's 6'3", 205. He has done nothing but hit the ball. And nobody pays attention. Nobody. Ross, break it down.
Oh, he's getting some prospect notoriety these days.
Yeah.
But let's start. Let's go back to 2018, his debut, and aggregate on that season across rookie level and single A. Struggled a little more at single A, but he hit 330 on that season with a 404 OBP and a 465 slugging percentage. And then in 2019, spent most of his season there at single A, and then high A, was promoted there. He hit 308 with a 380 OBP and a 440 slugging percentage. So up to this point in this guy's career, he's showing very solid plate discipline. Not a lot of power, though. On that season in 2019, as a 19-year-old, he only had 7 home runs. He only had 2 the prior year. 2021 came around. So I just want to highlight this because this is noteworthy. STS was into this guy at that point, which we were just getting started. So we were just getting our feet wet. I think I wrote about Miguel Vargas in 2019, and I added him in our league. Did you know that?
Do you have him still?
No. I traded him. I'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, STS picked up on this guy. I was on this guy. I added him that season. 2021 came around, and he was moved between high A and double A, so he's still working his way up. And he hit 319 with a 380 OBP, so very solid numbers again, but a 526 slugging percentage. That marks a career high, and 23 home runs from 7 the year prior, which was 2 years ago, 2019. So he really increased his home run production there.
I want to put this into perspective. At this point right here, with the stats that he's putting up, I watched him get dropped and nobody picked him up.
So fast forward to this season, all of his time in the minor leagues was spent at AAA, and he spent some time in the major leagues as well. He hit 304 with a 404 OBP, ties a career high going back to 2018, and a 511 slugging percentage. So again, he's hitting the ball well, 17 home runs, striking the ball really well. Got a taste in the major leagues, and he walked almost as much as he struck out. So that's a really good season. Promising. Hasn't quite translated to the major league level yet, but I think it will. The reason that I was on this guy so early was because of that plate discipline. You could see that plate discipline from the time he was 19 years old. There's not a lot of guys that are doing that. And you could see that although he did not have a lot of over the fence power, that it was there. So again, look at the doubles, 38 doubles, only 7 home runs. Now, the flip side of that is there's just something about this guy's profile that is like, while it's all super good, it like none of it pops to me. There's no popping. It's just, for a very good prospect, it's just good across the board. Nothing that I'm like, he's got massive power, or this guy is an on base machine. And I
Well,
think for that, and he is, but for that reason, and probably that reason alone, I was like, that's why I was ready to move on from it.
yeah. I don't understand why this profile hasn't completely exploded onto everybody's scene. It doesn't make any just the batting average alone. I mean, he's a career 313 hitter in 1600 at bats and gets on base at 390.
Again, as I was saying, I'm not so sure that I see anything that pops. Like, I don't know about an MVP in there, but like, you got a steady producer for a long time. And it's clear because he's done this over a very long sample in the minor leagues that he's got that capability. So
I do think that his value is not so astronomical that you can't go get him. And I think you should. I think he's a go get him. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at our top two. And top two for third baseman. Matter of fact, for any position, these two are really, really good. And I know Ross is really excited for the first one that we're going to talk about, number two, and for number one overall. I've listened to him talk glowingly about each one of them. So let's jump into it. And coming in at number two is Mr. Gunnar Henderson. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. He's 21 years old. He's out of high school, Morgan Selma, Alabama. He was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles in 2019, round 2, pick number 42 overall. And I can see the smile like creaking in on Ross's face.
all right, okay. Gunnar Henderson is a guy that I think I was not very high on. You hear his name and he came in with some prospect pedigree, and I was kind of like, as I do, fading it. Like, I fade basically everybody that comes into the league. I'm like, they're all garbage until they show me otherwise. And Gunnar Henderson was kind of in that quadrant where people were like, he looks kind of interesting. And it's like, nope, not interested. Well, he totally changed the hearts and minds of a lot of people this year, and I'm one of them. And so much so, he became Baseball America's number one overall prospect. That's huge. That's huge.
Huge.
So let me just walk through this. He debuted in 2019 as an 18-year-old and only 121 plate appearances, didn't show a whole lot, had a 259 batting average. Not a lot of power yet at this point, but this is very early on. After the 2020 break in 2021, he was put into single A. He worked his way through to high A and got a taste of double A at the end of the season. He showed a lot more power. He hit 17 home runs on the season overall, and he stole 16 bases. His slash line was 258, so slightly lower batting average. A lot of that came from that high A level, 350 on base percentage and a 476 slugging percentage. So I wouldn't call that it was a solid season. I wouldn't call it a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. Pretty solid season.
It wasn't a breakout.
But the problem is he struck out 143 times in 463 plate appearances. That's a high strikeout rate.
Yeah.
And if you show me a prospect like that, I'm immediately going to be a little skeptical. Overall in the season, that was a 31% strikeout rate.
Way too high.
It's pretty high. Pretty high. So while other people were interested in him because he was showing a little bit of power and a little bit of speed, I was not buying that.
For somebody that isn't destroying the ball, 31% cannot happen.
I mean, 17 home runs is good, but if
It's
you're
not
striking
destroying
out
it.
31% of the time,
Yep.
I want to see like 30 home runs at that point. You know?
Exactly.
So things changed come 2022 pretty dramatically, and it was obvious to see this very early on. So while I said on the season he struck out 31% of the time in 2021, in Double A, where he started, he cut that down to 18%. And you could immediately see the difference that made for him. At Double A, he hit 312 with a 452 on base percentage. He actually walked more than he struck out, walked at a 20% rate, and a 573 slugging percentage. To me, that has top prospect billing all over it.
On base plus slugging is at 1.
Baseball America agrees. That's
Yeah.
why they put him number 1.
As a massive deal at basically his first taste at Double A. I don't want to count the 15 at bats that he had in 2021, but 2022 was basically his first taste at Double A.
So he was promoted to Triple A. Again, we're talking about a 21-year-old, so he's still pretty young for that level. Moved up to Triple A. The numbers didn't quite hold up as strongly as they did at Double A. I think this is more small sample variance in his season, if anything. But he struck out a little bit more, 26%, still an improvement on last season. He hit 288 there with 390 OBP and a 504 slugging percentage. So he just mashed all season long, hit with power, stole a lot of bases. He got a cup of coffee at the end of the season. And there he did a lot of the same. He hit 4 home runs. He hit 259 with a 348 OBP and a 440 slugging percentage. Pretty good debut. And he's pretty close to no longer being prospect eligible.
Lots of hopes there, and I'm excited to watch it. It's going to be good.
I agree. Yeah. The Orioles look very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Yep. Number 1, Mr. Jordan Walker. And he is 6'5", 220 pounds. He's only 20 years old. He was drafted in 2020 by the St. Louis Cardinals, round 1, pick number 21 overall. And this is another guy that Ross, that he's been on your radar instantly. Like you were all over Jordan Walker, and I was like, who's this junko?
No.
And you were like, go look at him, Brian. And I did, and I was wrong again. So obviously we missed 2020. So in 2021, Jordan Walker was set in regular A, and he had 99 at bats. He batted 374, hit 6 home runs, on base percentage of 475 in 99 at bats. He got promoted to high A, had an extra 226 at bats. He batted 292, a 344 on base, and slugged 487 with 8 home runs and 13 stolen bases. I think that's probably what popped out to me. Is I looked at the size, I looked at everything going on here, and I was like, where did these stolen bases come from? You got to be kidding me. So overall, 325 at bats, 14 home runs, 14 stolen bases, an average of 317, on base 388, slugged 548, and gets a call up to Double A, which I didn't see happening. So he's 20 years old. He started at 19, right? Yeah. So he started the year at 19 years old at Double A. Very quickly turned to 20, but had 461 at bats, right? He batted 306 with an on base of 388 and slugged 510. Had 19 home runs and 22 stolen bases. 31 doubles. So just turn 5 of those into an extra 5 home runs. You got 24 home runs. My goodness. Jordan Walker, to me, came out of frickin' nowhere. I didn't see it, and Ross was all over it. Ross, what do you got on Jordan Walker?
I mean, looking at this profile, it kind of reminds me a little bit of what we talked about with Curtis Mead. This guy's just a hitter. He's just a hitter. What's surprising about it, though, is he steals a lot of bases. We have to bake a little projection into this. I think when we're talking about Jordan Walker, because he's clearly a hitter. He's done it everywhere he's been so far. But I think he's got more power than we're even seeing so far in his career.
Yeah.
And given his size, that should not be a big surprise. I don't think the stolen bases are going to be there quite as much as they are now.
Yeah.
But he's got some speed there. And that's
maybe he's
difference.
crafty.
That's the big difference between him and like a Curtis Mead is he's got some speed. And he's maybe a slightly better hitter. It's very close, though. Slightly better. I am really excited for this guy. I think he's one of the top prospects in baseball. He should be a top 10 prospect everywhere. And if he's not, then there's something wrong. He's a very talented player. Scout the Statline gives him, out of everybody from the third base ranks that we talked about tonight, he's got the best hit tool for his scout grade equivalencies at 65. Now, I think Scout the Statline is even a little low on him when it comes to his power tool. He's got major league average power according to them. And this is where I was saying the projection has to come in. This guy's a big guy.
Yeah. And
he's known for his power. Even though he's not really hitting with it right now, I think he's going to have a lot of power. And that's not to say he's not hitting with it, because he hit 19 home runs. That's not like a small amount, but I think there's more in there. I think this is like a floor is probably 30 home run power at peak. And then you get into the stolen bases, the less predictable part of this. I don't think it's going to be a big part of his game, but like if he was stealing 10 bags, that wouldn't terribly surprise me.
Yeah. Do you think we see Jordan Walker in the pros in 2023?
I think we could see him get a taste, potentially. I think a cup of coffee, possibly. Anything outside of that is abnormal. And if he were to move up early, very early, then you better be on top of this guy, because he's going to be a superstar. That's what that's telling you. If he's up really early, if he breaks camp with them, you throw everything you have at trying to get this guy, minus your superstars that you already got, if you have any. You throw everything to get this guy, because he's going to have a huge career if that happens.
As far as your personal rankings go, where do you put Jordan Walker?
He's easily top 5 for me. I don't know if I know precisely where I'm going to put him yet. After we go through all of these conversations, I'll probably place all my guys, but I think right now he's top 5.
That's a really good take. Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Our top 10 third baseman prospects in all of MLB. Well, as always, I am Brian. Everybody, take care. We'll talk to you again soon.